From undisputed glory to throwing one of boxing's most prestigious titles into a trash can, Riddick Bowe's story is one of dominance, drama, and the night boxing itself nearly unraveled. With a fortune that reached as high as $80 million at his peak, he stood at the center of a world where everything seemed possible. He possessed the physical gifts that trainers dream of, the reach of a skyscraper, the jab of a lightweight. He wasn't just a fighter, he was a natural phenomenon. For a fleeting, glorious moment in 1992, he was the baddest man on the planet. But in boxing, the hardest fight isn't always the one in the ring. It's the one against the version of yourself you have to leave behind to become a champion. Today, we're going behind the gloves of the man who had the world in his palm, only to watch it slip through his fingers. If you enjoy cinematic boxing documentaries like this one, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn on the bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next. To understand Riddick Bowe, you have to look at the concrete of Brownsville, Brooklyn. This wasn't a place of comfort. It was a crucible. It was a neighborhood where toughness was the only currency that mattered. And for a young Riddick, boxing wasn't a hobby. It was an escape velocity. By the time he reached the 1988 Seoul Olympics, he was a massive favorite. But he ran into a brick wall named Lennox Lewis. That silver medal was proof of his quality, but it also left a scar, a reminder that talent alone isn't enough when the pressure is absolute. When he turned pro in 1989, the world saw something different. He wasn't just big, he was fluid. He fought like a man half his size, with a jab that could dismantle opponents before they even got inside his reach. The hunger for combat found its greatest stage on November 13, 1992, in Las Vegas. This was the night the torch was passed. Riddick Bowe stepped into the ring against Evander Holyfield, a warrior universally respected as the pinnacle of the division. Their first clash is hailed as one of the greatest heavyweight fights ever. A 12-round war where Bowe outpunched, outmaneuvered, and outwilled the champion to secure his legacy. That night, Bowe was undisputed. He was the king. But soon after, the ego of the Big Daddy era began to manifest in ways that shocked the sport. In a move that remains one of the most bizarre displays of defiance in boxing history, Bowe and his manager, Rock Newman, opted to avoid a mandatory defense against Lennox Lewis. Bowe literally threw the WBC heavyweight title into a trash can at a press conference. It was a calculated, albeit arrogant, statement that prioritized his own comfort over the sanctity of the sport, signaling that he was entering a sphere of influence where politics and avoidance began to eclipse the pure competitive spirit that had brought him to the top. At his absolute peak in the mid-1990s, he moved into a massive, custom-built $6.6 million presidential estate in Fort Washington, Maryland. This 32,000-square-foot tan brick mansion was the ultimate display of 1990s heavyweight boxing excess. The grounds featured an Olympic dimensions swimming pool with a custom waterfall and a private pond with exotic Japanese koi fish. The entire third floor was a private master suite with a 10 by 10-foot bed and a futuristic television screen that rose from a floor. He famously had the word Bowe custom cut into the front yard shrubbery, a mark of his absolute dominion. He collected cars like others collected cheap trinkets, at one point owning a fleet of 26 luxury vehicles. When he wanted the pinnacle of luxury, he turned to the Rolls-Royce Seraph, a flagship sedan that exuded untouchable prestige. For pure British elegance, he leaned into his stable of Bentleys, while his daily rotation often shifted between a fleet of 6 Mercedes-Benz sedans and a top-of-the-line BMW 750iL, blending high-end performance with executive comfort. But he wasn't just about the boardroom. When he craved the open air, he hopped on his Harley-Davidson motorcycle, feeling the roar of the engine beneath him. His garage also reflected a love for the past and the practical. He kept a vintage 1970 Cadillac as a nod to American muscle, parked neatly alongside a customized Ford Suburban. From the outside, Big Daddy appeared to have everything a heavyweight champion could dream of. But while his empire was growing larger by the day, the discipline that built it was quietly beginning to disappear. Yet, despite the grandeur, He often retreated from his 32,000 square foot palace to sleep on a cot in his mother's smaller basement nearby, a reflection of the deep-seated loneliness that lingered beneath the excess. The trilogy that followed, Bowe vs. Holyfield 2 and 3, became the defining narrative of his career. It was a rivalry of blood, sweat, and for Bowe, the beginning of a pattern of volatility. He would win the trilogy 2-1, but the cost was immense. Look at the 1993 rematch. During this fight, a paraglider literally crashed into the ring, the infamous Fan Man incident. That bizarre moment became the perfect symbol of the unpredictability that seemed to dog Bowe's career. He would go on to have other big moments, but his rivalry with Andrew Golota remains the most jarring chapter. Their 1996 fights became infamous for repeated low blows from the Polish contender. Golota dominated with his fists but ignored the rules until he was disqualified in the 7th round. The result? A massive riot erupted inside Madison Square Garden. Fans stormed the ring, chairs were thrown, and the melee became a total nightmare. The violence resulted in 16 arrests. Their rematch later that year in Atlantic City followed a similar, albeit less violent, pattern of disqualification. Bowe's name was forever tied to that night, not just as a winner, but as the centerpiece of a chaotic spectacle. As the chaos of the ring began to mirror the chaos of his personal life, the tragedy of Riddick Bowe became something more than just a boxing record. It became a story about the what-if. His personal life, much like his career, became marked by intense turbulence. His first marriage to Judy Bowe, which began in the early 1990s and produced 5 children, devolved into a public nightmare. The relationship ended in divorce in 1999, but not before a dark, defining moment in 1998 when Bowe, in a desperate and misguided attempt at forced reconciliation, kidnapped Judy and their children. The act led to his arrest and an 18-month prison sentence, a low point that stripped away the veneer of his celebrity and shattered his public image. Later, in August 2000, he married Terry Blakeney, though their life together remained largely out of the public eye. His post-boxing life, marked by legal issues and personal tragedies, has been a slow, sad descent that often overshadows his legendary right hand. His extravagant lifestyle, lack of financial guidance, and extreme generosity toward his entourage eventually led to financial ruin. He filed for bankruptcy in 2005, despite earning over $80 million in his career. His later years were marred by self-inflicted wounds. He frequently dealt with weight discipline issues, appearing out of shape for fights that he returned to after retiring multiple times. And he even attempted an ill-advised kickboxing comeback between 2013 and 2016 that saw him badly beaten and ridiculed for being unprepared. The contrast between his past and present is stark. As of 2026, Riddick Bowe's net worth is estimated to be between $30,000 and $50,000. He actually turned to trucking and bus driving as a regular career, stating that driving was one of the few things that genuinely relaxed him. It is a sobering reflection of the financial storms he weathered after the final bell rang. A life once defined by tens of millions in earnings, now stripped down by the relentless weight of poor financial management and the unforgiving nature of a sport that often leaves its warriors with nothing but memories. But look past the headlines. Look at the man who had to navigate a world that only valued him as long as he was winning. The resilience of Riddick Bowe isn't found in his belts. It's found in his survival. He navigated the transition from the gladiator of the 90s to the man he is today, a journey that required a different kind of strength than the one he used in the ring. Ultimately, Riddick Bowe remains one of the most enigmatic figures in boxing history. When you look back at his highlights, you see the flashes of genius, a heavyweight who could do things that should have been physically impossible. That's the Riddick Bowe the world chooses to remember. A man who, for one beautiful, brutal moment in 1992, really was the king of the world. He shows us that the fall is often just as revealing as the rise, and that even the baddest man on the planet is just a man underneath the gloves, searching for a place to stand when the lights finally dim. Riddick Bowe didn't just fight opponents. He fought history, spectacle, and the madness of the moment. The question is, when the smoke cleared, did the chaos define the man? Or did the man define the chaos? If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of boxing's most unforgettable heavyweight champions, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next documentary. And if you want to watch another incredible boxing story, check out our deep dive into Felix Tito Trinidad, a legendary champion whose rise, wealth, and legacy changed boxing forever. Trust me, it's one you won't want to miss. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.